Total darkness. No music, no voices, just waves crashing against cold sand, wind slicing across an empty beach. Boots press into wet Normandy soil, heavy, slow, deliberate. Somewhere in the distance, gunfire cracks, then silence, a battlefield frozen in time. Now hear this. June 6, 1944. Thousands stormed these shores, heroes were born, medals were handed out. History was written, that's the version you know, but pause right there, because some of the bravest men who landed on this beach vanished. Their faces blur in forgotten photographs. Their names fade from textbooks. Black soldiers loading ships in the dead of night, hands tightening around rifles, eyes staring forward, knowing there's a strong chance they won't come back. They didn't hesitate. They charged into machine gun fire. They dragged wounded brothers across open sand. They carried ammunition through smoke so thick you couldn't see your own hands. They fought Nazis, they bled for freedom, they helped save Europe. And yet when the cameras rolled, they disappeared. White faces filled the headlines, white names filled the history books. Their sacrifice was buried beneath silence. Imagine surviving Hitler only to be erased by your own country. Imagine risking everything for a nation that still wouldn't let you sit at the same lunch counter. These men wore the same uniform, saluted the same flag, died under the same sky. But when victory came, America looked the other way. No parades, no front-page stories, just quiet train rides home, back entrances, segregated buses, medals that never arrived. So ask yourself this. How does a hero vanish from history? How does courage get edited out? Because what happened on these beaches wasn't just a battle against Nazi Germany. It was a battle against racism, against silence, against being forgotten. And here's the part they don't teach in school. D-Day wasn't just won by the soldiers you've seen in movies. It was carried on the backs of black men who were told they were second class, yet fought like giants. So why did America erase them? Because the truth of D-Day is darker and more powerful than you were ever taught. America, early 1940s. Morning light spills over city streets and stops at a sign that reads colored only. Buses with invisible lines down the middle, water fountains divided by skin. Jim Crow written into everyday life, now cut to living rooms across the country. Families gathered tight around crackling radios. News of Hitler, news of bombs, news of war, mothers clutch rosaries, fathers stare at the floor, and young black men listen quietly. Because the country that won't let them sit beside a white stranger on a bus is now asking them to fight for freedom overseas. That's the contradiction, that's the first war, democracy abroad. Discrimination at home, still they line up. Long rows of young black men outside recruiting offices, best shirts pressed, shoes polished, hope shining in their eyes, fear hiding behind tight smiles. They raise their right hands, take the oath, put on the uniform, they wear the same olive green, salute the same flag, march to the same drums, but then reality hits, separate barracks. Separate mess halls, separate bathrooms, sometimes separate entrances. They're called soldiers, yet treated like guests, or worse. Many are placed under officers who openly doubt them, who whisper that black troops don't have the stomach for battle, who say they're only good for carrying crates. So that's what they're given, shovels, kitchen duty, endless boxes of ammunition. They cook, they dig, they haul supplies through mud and rain, while white units train for glory. Combat roles are rare, trust is rarer, but here's the part that hits hardest. They don't complain. They volunteer, they beg for frontline duty, not because they love war, because they're tired of being invisible. They want to prove something, to America, to history, to themselves. They write letters home saying they're proud to serve. They hide the humiliation, they swallow the anger, they stand taller anyway, because every drill feels like a test. Every command feels like judgment. And every day carries the same silent question, will my courage ever count? Some lie awake in their bunks at night, listening to distant trains. Thinking about home, thinking about what waits for them after the war, freedom or the same old signs. Then orders begin to circulate, ships are being loaded, maps are being studied. Something massive is coming, something deadly. They don't know where, they don't know when. Only that history is about to move, and they're part of it. They were preparing for the biggest invasion in human history while fighting a war inside their own country. Cold dawn, breath turning to fog. Boots pounding frozen ground as rows of black soldiers run until their legs burn and their lungs scream. No applause, no cameras, just grit, Meet the unit's history tried to forget. The 320th Barrage Balloon Battalion, the 761st Tank Battalion, the 333rd Field Artillery, and the stevedore battalions, men who load ships through the night, hands raw, backs breaking while the world sleeps. These aren't recruits. These are volunteers for the impossible. Training is relentless, mud-soaked drills, live rounds cracking inches overhead, tanks roaring past so close the earth shakes, cold mornings that feel like punishment. Hot afternoons that feel like survival. Some officers watch with folded arms, shaking their heads. A few say it out loud. Black troops will fold under pressure. They don't have the stomach for combat. They're only good for carrying crates. The men hear it, every word, every doubt, so they train harder, they run faster, they clean rifles until their fingers ache. They memorize maps. They practice under fire, because they're not just preparing for war, they're fighting for respect. Letters go home, mothers read them by lamplight, sisters hold them close to their chests. The words are brave, hopeful, but between the lines lives fear. If I don't make it back, tell Dad I tried. Then one day, everything changes. Orders arrive, short, sharp, final, Operation Overlord. The room goes quiet. Normandy, France, the biggest invasion in human history. Suddenly the drills make sense. The sleepless nights, the bruises, the silence, quick flashes, helmets packed tight. Dog tags tucked under shirts, photos folded and slipped into pockets, a sweetheart's smile, a baby's face, men standing shoulder to shoulder on transport ships, whispering prayers into the wind. Some stare at the horizon, some close their eyes, some grip their rifles like lifelines. They don't know exactly where they'll land, they don't know who will fall. They don't know if history will ever remember them. They only know they're going, into gunfire, into chaos, into legend. They weren't told the full plan, only that many wouldn't come back, gray sky. Angry ocean, metal landing craft slamming against waves like fists on a door that won't open. June 6, 1944, D-Day, the ramps drop and hell pours in, machine gun fire rips across open water. Bullets chew through steel, men fall before their boots even touch sand. The air smells like salt, smoke, and fear. Somewhere in that chaos, black soldiers step forward. Barrage balloon units rush into position, hauling massive floating shields into the sky, trying to block German aircraft while bombs thunder overhead. Stevedores sprint from ship to shore, unloading crates of ammunition and medical supplies while shells explode close enough to lift them off their feet. Artillery crews fire nonstop. Boom, boom, boom. Each blast shaking their bones. They don't pause, they don't look back, they just keep moving, then something unexpected happens. White units take heavy losses, lines break. Orders vanish in the noise, and black soldiers pick up rifles. They don't wait for permission. They drag wounded men out of surf-soaked red. They patch broken communications. They fill empty positions. They advance when others are forced to retreat. Zoom in. One soldier throws himself over his friend as shrapnel tears through the air. Another races across open sand with medical supplies, bullets snapping past his ears. Tank crews from the 761st push forward through burning villages, smoke crawling across the streets, walls collapsing around them. Their tanks roll over rubble, past bodies, past fire. Inside those metal beasts, men whisper prayers between commands. Outside, infantry follow, stepping over craters still steaming. This isn't just combat. This is survival in motion. Every breath feels borrowed. Every step might be the last. And they fight like they have nothing left to lose, because for many of them, they don't. They know they're risking their lives for a country that barely acknowledges their humanity. Yet they charge anyway. They save lives. They hold ground. They help turn the tide of the largest invasion in human history. Then the reporters arrive. Cameras click, notebooks open, history begins to write itself, and somehow the lens shifts. White faces fill the frames. White names fill the headlines. The black soldiers fade into the background. Their heroism goes undocumented, their bravery uncaptioned, their sacrifice quietly erased. Imagine that, storming Nazi gunfire, carrying wounded brothers through smoke, holding the line when it's falling apart, only to be cropped out of victory. They fought beside America, yet America refused to see them. So here's the question that should haunt you if courage looks like this. French countryside rushing past tank treads. Smoke curling over shattered villages. The Allies push inland. Paris is liberated. Church bells ring through streets packed with cheering crowds. Germany begins to crack. And right there in the middle of it all, black soldiers keep fighting. Through hedgerows, through bombed-out towns, through frozen forests. The 761st Tank Battalion rolls forward, steel monsters cutting paths through enemy fire. They don't stop. Not for sleep, not for fear, not for glory. They fight for 183 straight days. And when it's over, they earn a Presidential Unit Citation, one of the highest honors in the military. Meanwhile, the 333rd Field Artillery walks straight into hell during the Battle of the Bulge. Snow, darkness, German ambushes, entire units wiped out, men captured, men executed, others vanish into the white silence. No cameras, no headlines, just empty foxholes and frozen boots. Across Europe, black units bleed for every mile. They secure bridges, protect supply lines, hold positions under relentless shelling. Men die quietly, heroes go unnamed. Their bravery logged in reports no one reads. Then suddenly it's over. The war ends, Germany collapses, victory explodes across America, ticker tape rains from skyscrapers, bands march. Crowds scream, flags wave, the world celebrates, and black soldiers finally come home, still in uniform, still carrying scars, still expecting dignity. Instead, they're told to use the back entrance. They apply for GI Bill benefits and get turned away. They try to buy homes and are denied loans. Some are dragged from buses. Some are beaten for daring to wear their military jackets in public. Let that sink in. They survived Normandy. They survived artillery barrages. They survived Nazi bullets, but they can't walk safely down their own streets. Imagine fighting fascism overseas only to come back to segregation. Imagine risking your life for democracy, then being told you don't qualify for it. No parades in their neighborhoods. No headlines with their names, just silence. Just closed doors, just the same old signs, white only. They defeated Hitler, but racism was still standing. And here's the cruelest twist of all. Many of these men never spoke about what they did. Not to their kids, not to their neighbors, they carried it quietly. Because how do you explain saving the world when your country refuses to save you? A quiet archive room, dust floating in thin beams of light, cardboard boxes stacked floor to ceiling. Inside them, war reports, photographs, names written in fading ink. And here's where the story slows down, because this is the moment you realize it wasn't an accident. Military historians would later admit it. Records were buried, photos were filed away. Heroism was quietly minimized, not destroyed, just hidden. For decades, school books told the same version of D-Day. White soldiers charging beaches, white officers leading the way, white heroes saving Europe. Turn the pages, watch the documentaries. Stream the movies, same story, same faces. No black soldiers on the sand, no black hands loading artillery, no black voices screaming over gunfire. Hollywood followed the script. History followed the script. An entire generation grew up believing D-Day looked one way, but it didn't. And the men who knew the truth went home. They built families, they worked jobs. They aged quietly. Medals sat untouched in dresser drawers. Some never even told their wives what they did. Not because they were ashamed, because nobody ever asked. Imagine carrying Normandy inside your chest for 50 years. Imagine remembering the screams, the smoke, the friends who didn't make it, while the world pretends you weren't there. Then decades later, something cracks. Survivors start speaking. A few interviews. A few historians digging deeper. Old soldiers sit in folding chairs, hands trembling, voices low. Wrinkles map their faces, eyes still sharp with memory. They talk about dragging wounded men through surf, about tanks rolling through burning villages, about fighting Nazis while being treated as second class. Some pause mid-sentence, swallow hard, because they're not just remembering war, they're remembering erasure. One veteran finally says it out loud, his voice steady, his words devastating. We saved lives, but nobody saved our story. And suddenly everything lands at once, not just the injustice. Not just the racism, but the weight of being invisible after doing the impossible. Pause here. Let that silence breathe. These men didn't fade from history. They were edited out on purpose. This is the breaking point, because once you understand that, you realize this wasn't just about D-Day. It was about who America decided was worth remembering. Bright sunlight, soft waves. Normandy Beach today, tourists smile into phone cameras, couples stroll hand in hand. Children build sandcastles where bullets once tore through flesh. Seagulls cry overhead. It feels peaceful. Almost too peaceful, but look closer. Every footstep presses into sacred ground, because beneath this quiet sand lie forgotten footprints, thousands of them. Boot prints from men who ran toward gunfire, men who never made it home, men whose names never reached textbooks. The ocean keeps their secrets. The wind carries their echoes. And for decades, so did silence. Then slowly, quietly, the truth starts to surface. Historians open dusty boxes in forgotten archives. They uncover reports no one bothered to read. Photographs never published. Unit rosters buried in file cabinets. Families get phone calls they never expected. Grandchildren finally learn what their grandfathers did. Some receive medals more than 70 years late. Hands shake as ribbons are pinned on old jackets. Congress issues formal recognition. Monuments rise, plaques appear. Names are carved into stone. But here's the cruel part. So many of the men who earned that honor aren't here to see it. They died waiting for someone to say thank you. Waiting for the country they served to finally admit the truth. Imagine surviving Normandy only to leave this world before your story is told. That's not just tragedy, that's theft. Because history doesn't just forget. Sometimes it chooses who matters. It decides which faces go in museums, which voices make it into movies, which sacrifices are remembered and which are buried. So when you walk these beaches, when you see the calm water and blue sky, remember this. You're standing on ground paid for in blood, some of it acknowledged, some of it erased. Modern sunlight spilling across Normandy's beaches. A breeze stirs the sand. Descendants stand quietly, faces solemn, hands brush against engraved stone, names etched deep, names that almost vanished. They trace the letters with reverence, fingers trembling. You can almost feel the weight of every story pressed into that stone, and then hear it in the stillness. They didn't fight for glory. They fought because freedom demanded it. Pause, think of that. Men storming beaches under fire, saving lives, carrying the world on their shoulders while America refused to see them as equals. They helped break Nazi Germany while carrying America's racism on their backs. Every step, every shot fired, every friend lost, and yet history nearly forgot them, but courage cannot be erased. They didn't just help win D-Day. They proved courage doesn't care about color. Soft pause. So when you remember Normandy, remember all of them, because their footprints are still there. Because their stories demand to be told. Because history doesn't change unless we force it to.